I always knew something was wrong when she started folding my socks differently. Not wrong like murder in the basement wrong, but wrong like someone trying too hard to act normal after they've already sold your dog. It wasn't even subtle. She rolled them like sushi, neat little spirals in a drawer she hadn't touched in years. I stared at them longer than anyone should ever stare at socks, and that's when I realized, someone trying that hard to pretend they care is someone hiding a body in the crawl space. Or, more accurately in this case, hiding another man's attention between text message threads and half-hearted smiles. She'd left her phone on the coffee table, face down, screen still warm. Now, you might think this is nothing, but let me tell you, Sarah guarded her phone like it held national secrets. She took it to the bathroom. She took it to the shower. She even took it to the goddamn mailbox. But that day, it just sat there, like bait on a hook. And I took it. Hook, line, and screenshot. I didn't unlock it. I didn't need to. The message was already glowing on the lock screen. Last night was perfect. I can still smell you on my fingers. Sent by Kyle Droplet. Not Kyle from work. Not Kyle the neighbor. Just Kyle. With a fucking water droplet emoji. Subtle as a brick to the face. Still, I didn't say a word. I poured myself a drink, turned on the dishwasher, which I knew she hated because it made that high-pitched squeal, and sat on the couch like it was any other Tuesday. But in my head, everything slowed down. I started rewinding our last 3 months. Her sudden interest in fitness classes. Her constant joking that I was getting boring. The way she started sleeping in tank tops again, like she used to when we first dated. That wasn't for me. I knew that now. But again, calm. Not because I'm some enlightened Buddha of betrayal. No, because I didn't want her to know I knew. Yet, I wanted her to feel safe in her lies. I wanted her to settle into them like a snake warming itself on a sunlit rock, unaware that the fire's about to be turned up to cremation. I started mimicking her. I mirrored her apathy. If she stayed late, I stayed later. If she ignored my texts, I ignored hers twice as hard. I made her feel what I felt. Every unanswered call, every half-lie, every smile that didn't quite reach the eyes. And the beauty of it? She thought I was slipping. She thought I was growing distant, falling out of love, maybe even having my own fling. She started asking passive-aggressive questions like, "You're home late," with that fake casual tone women use when they already have a narrative ready. I'd just shrug and say, "Gym ran long," even though I hadn't touched a dumbbell. But she didn't press. She didn't want the truth. She wanted confirmation of her own guilt in me. She was desperate for justification. I gave it to her. Then came the makeup sex. That one was hard to stomach. Because it wasn't passion, it was panic. She initiated it, and I played along, every move calculated. She wanted to convince herself that we were still okay, or that I was the villain now. So I gave her robotic moans, vacant eyes, and the kind of dead stares that would make a priest question his vows. I knew she'd break soon. People like her can't survive guilt unless they pin it on someone else. And sure enough, 3 days later, she sat me down at the kitchen table, same one we'd picked out during our dream home phase, and gave me the speech. The "I love you, but I'm not in love with you" speech. Like a script she'd been rehearsing in the mirror, probably while texting Kyle Droplet under the bathroom sink light. She talked about space, about finding herself, about how we'd grown apart. She looked relieved when I nodded silently, like she expected a fight and was glad she wouldn't have to face one. That's when I knew. She thought she had the power. She thought she was choosing this. But the joke, the brutal, exquisite punchline, was that I'd been the one pulling strings for weeks. She was just dancing in a theater she didn't know I built. I didn't stop her. I didn't ask why. I just gave her what she wanted, a clean break, no resistance, full compliance. She moved out a week later, thinking she'd escaped a dying marriage to chase freedom. I didn't tell her I'd already wiped the shared savings account the day before, redirecting the funds into an offshore account under my sister's name. I didn't mention I'd transferred the house deed to a trust she'd signed off on last year when I told her it was a tax document. She didn't know she'd walked out of a life that would have made her comfortable for decades. All she knew was that she was finally free. And that's what made it so beautiful. She'd burned her own lifeboat, thinking she was flying. For a while, everything felt like it was falling into place. The kind of calm that makes you think the worst is behind you. Quiet dinners, shared glances across the room, brushing teeth together in silence that somehow felt like peace. I'd come home from work and she'd be curled up on the couch, blanket over her legs, book in her hands, candles lit like we were in some Pinterest version of marriage. She still kissed me goodbye in the mornings, still asked if I wanted anything when she went to the store, still called me babe, like she meant it. And I wanted so badly to believe in it. In us. In the idea that we had weathered our storms and were back on solid ground. But slowly, like water rising under a locked door, things started to change. First, it was the music. She swapped out our playlists for strange, ambient crap with ocean sounds and whispered affirmations about self-love. Then came the books, stacked high on her nightstand. Titles like Boundary Queen, How to Choose Yourself, and Unbecoming for Beginners. I laughed when I saw that one, made some dumb joke about the title, and she smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. It was the kind of smile you give a stranger when you want them to go away without making a scene. Then she started saying things like, I just need a little more space, when I'd sit next to her on the couch. Or, can we not talk about that right now? When I asked about her day. At first I thought she was just stressed. Maybe work had been hard or hormones or something else you can't fix with an apology. But that space she asked for grew teeth. She started sleeping with her phone under her pillow. Her social media, which she used to flood with selfies of us and throwback Thursday memories, went private. When I asked about it, she said something about needing to curate her online presence more intentionally. Whatever the hell that meant. She started going out, too. Not in wild ways, not the kind of thing that would set off alarms. Just little things. Yoga class on Tuesday nights. A new book club with women I'd never met. Weekend trips with friends from college that I'd never heard of until she packed a bag. Her eyes were always a little too bright when she talked about these outings. Like she'd been drinking from some fountain I wasn't allowed to touch. She began wearing different clothes. Looser, more flowy, stuff she said helped her connect with her femininity. But the perfume was different, too. And it wasn't flowy. It was expensive. Sharp. Designed to attract, not to relax. I noticed the small purchases first. Crystals, oils, overpriced skincare. Then came the big ones, a new set of luggage, an Apple Watch, a weird-looking chair she called an ergonomic meditation throne. I asked her once if we were still okay financially, and she just laughed and said, "You're always so worried about money." Like being responsible was a character flaw. She never outright lied. That's what made it worse. She just told me half stories. She said she had dinner with a few coworkers, but didn't name them. She said she was tired, but didn't sleep. She said she loved me, but it felt like a reflex, like someone answering the phone with hello, even when they don't want to talk. One night, I found a men's hoodie in the trunk of her car. It wasn't mine, and it wasn't new. It smelled faintly like cologne and lemon. I stared at it for 5 full minutes before quietly folding it and putting it back. I didn't confront her. I still wanted to believe. Maybe it was her brother's. Maybe a coworker left it. Maybe I was being paranoid. But deep down, in the part of me that remembers the way her hands used to linger on my back or how her eyes used to lock with mine when I said something stupid but heartfelt, I knew. I was no longer in the story she was writing. I was just a side character she hadn't figured out how to kill off yet. Still, I stayed calm. I watched. I hoped. But every night, the silence grew louder. And every morning, her smile got a little more distant, like she was already waking up in another life, in another bed, with another man. And I was just a shadow clinging to her heels, hoping she'd turn around. But she never did. Not really. It happened on a Thursday, the most forgettable of weekdays, which made it all the more devastating in its banality. She told me she had a night meditation circle at some wellness studio downtown, something she'd mentioned once or twice before, always with a glazed look in her eyes like the words had been programmed in. She wore that same white flowing cardigan she always did for these things, the one she claimed helped her absorb energy more clearly. I didn't question it. Not out loud. I just nodded like a good husband and told her to have a peaceful evening. But that night, I felt something pull at me, something cold and instinctive. I didn't follow her. I didn't track her phone. I didn't install spyware or even leave the house. I just did what any rational man on the brink does. I picked up her laptop. Not to pry. Not even to look. Just to see if the screen was still warm. It was. She'd forgotten to log out. And that's when I saw it. Not in her email. Not in her messages. No, she wasn't that careless. It was her calendar. A digital, color-coded map of betrayal. Appointments she'd labeled as therapy, soul work, breath practice. All fake. All covered. And then, right there, sandwiched neatly between chakra realignment and sound bath session, was a recurring event titled K. Safe Space Blue Heart. The location? An address that wasn't a studio or a wellness retreat. It was a private apartment. I copied the address and pasted it into Maps. My hands were still. My pulse didn't even change. Just an eerie quiet in my chest, like my heart had gone into stealth mode. The route popped up 18 minutes away. I didn't go there. I didn't need to. I clicked on her photo roll synced to the cloud, something I hadn't done in years. Most of it was screenshots of quotes, random selfies, pictures of salads, affirmations about divine feminine energy. But in between all that, buried in a folder labeled Reflections, were the real hits. A photo of her and Kyle, he of the droplet emoji, shirtless on a couch I'd never seen before, her face pressed to his shoulder, her smile wide and stupid with trust. Another one of her in a mirror, hair tousled, wrapped in a towel, time-stamped for the exact same night she told me she'd been processing trauma in a group setting. But the one that did it, the one that didn't just hurt but unzipped my spine, was a short video. It opened with her whispering, "I can't believe I ever thought I loved him," followed by the distinct sound of lips meeting lips, a laugh, and her voice again, this time quieter, "You're the one I should have married." I didn't blink. I didn't flinch. I just closed the tab, closed the laptop, and sat very still in the dark kitchen with only the refrigerator humming like a slow funeral song. That was the moment. Not when she lied. Not when she touched someone else. But when she spoke about me like I was a mistake. A regret. An old coat left behind at a party that got better the moment I left. That's when the man I used to be died. The hopeful one. The forgiving one. The one who still believed that maybe it was just a phase or a misstep or a search for something she couldn't name. No, in that moment, I didn't grieve. I didn't cry. I began construction. I laid the first brick of a new reality, a reality where she thought she was still in control, where she believed I was oblivious, passive, weak. And that illusion was my greatest weapon. I didn't confront her when she came home 2 hours later than she said she would, claiming traffic and a late circle talk. I didn't say a word when she leaned in to kiss me and I smelled someone else's breath on her lips. I just smiled, asked if she wanted tea, made it just the way she liked, and watched as she scrolled through her phone, completely unaware that her little fantasy bubble had already been punctured. She was still inside her story, but I had stepped outside of it. I wasn't a character anymore. I was the author now, and she had no idea the ending was already being written. Every scene, every word, crafted with surgical precision. She thought she was drifting away from me, but in truth, I was already gone. And what was left was not a man she could manipulate with guilt or misdirection. What was left was a ghost with a plan, a silence that would swallow her whole. I became the wallpaper in my own home, a presence she no longer noticed, a shadow she thought she'd outgrown. She still played the part, morning pecks on the cheek, fake yawns over coffee, the occasional, "we should do something fun soon," but her eyes were already living in someone else's future. I knew better than to confront her. Confrontation is what they expect. That's where they feel most comfortable. Tears, gaslighting, crocodile guilt trips, sob stories about not feeling seen. No, I didn't give her that. I gave her silence, space, and the illusion of security. While she was busy weaving lies, I was stitching together her undoing, thread by thread. I started with the schedule. I memorized her routines like a man studying the tides. Tuesdays and Thursdays, yoga. Wednesdays, book club. Saturdays, women's spiritual hiking group. All bullshit. I tested the yoga theory first by calling the studio she said she attended. Told them I was looking for a surprise class for her birthday. The receptionist was sweet. Too sweet. Told me she hadn't been there in over a month. Strike one. The book club was next. She'd been going on about how they were reading The Power of Now. So I casually asked her one night if she thought the book's take on duality contradicted the Bhagavad Gita. She blinked, then muttered something about the main character's trauma, which confirmed one thing: she hadn't read a single page. Strike two. Then came the hiking group. That one intrigued me. She always returned from it glowing, sweaty but satisfied, like someone who'd just exorcised demons through nature and orgasm. So I waited until one Saturday morning when she left in full gear, leggings, boots, oversized sunglasses, and 20 minutes later, I called her phone from a different number. Burner app. Blocked ID. She didn't answer, but she texted back, "Can't talk. We're on the trail," complete with a forest emoji. Except I was already parked half a block from the address she'd left from, some bland, gray apartment complex with an underground garage. I watched from the shadows as she walked out with a bag slung over her shoulder and got into a car that was not hers. I took a picture. License plate, timestamp, clear view of her face as she laughed getting into the passenger seat. Strike 3. But I still didn't confront. I wanted more. I wanted to map every lie, catalog every betrayal. So I checked our bank statements, subtle recurring charges every Friday morning for a random nutrition bar shop downtown. But she never mentioned it. I drove to the place the next day, walked in, and asked the guy at the counter if he recognized her. He smiled and said, "Oh yeah, she's always in here with that tall guy. Long hair, drives the Jeep." The pieces were falling fast now. Her friend Lisa, her alleged emotional rock, was my next target. She'd been name-dropped so often I was beginning to think she was imaginary. So I created a fake social media account, some new age guy with crystals and quotes about energy alignment. I DM'd Lisa, commented on one of her posts about spiritual journeys, and within 3 days, we were chatting. I casually mentioned how I was thinking about signing up for a retreat at the same cabin resort Sarah had visited 2 weekends ago. Lisa didn't miss a beat. "Oh, she went to that with Kyle, right? I thought they were keeping it low-key." I let out a breath I didn't realize I'd been holding. There it was, his name, dropped like it meant nothing. Like I meant nothing. I thanked her, logged out, and deleted the account. Then, I started laying traps. Nothing direct, just bait to see if she'd keep spinning her web. One night, I told her I might be getting a job offer in a city 4 hours away. Watched her eyes twitch. Watched her pretend to support the idea. "We'll figure it out," she said. "Maybe long distance would be good for us right now." Long distance. Like we were teenagers playing pen pal with a marriage license. That night, while she showered, I moved her toothbrush slightly, rotated her shampoo bottle, switched the positions of the conditioner and body wash. Just enough to see if she'd notice. She didn't. She was too distracted. I checked her call log when she left her phone charging in the kitchen. Kyle's number wasn't there. But a burner number was. No contact name, just frequent calls and texts, always around the time she claimed to be offline for healing. I called it once, late at night, then hung up after one ring. The next morning, she was extra sweet. Made breakfast, rubbed my shoulders, kissed the back of my neck like she used to when we were still real. She was scared. She didn't know what I knew, only that I might know something. That's when I knew I had her exactly where I wanted her. I wasn't going to scream or accuse. I was going to let her walk straight into her own trap, thinking she was still safe, still clever, still in control. I had become the silence she no longer understood, a mirror she couldn't manipulate. Every lie she told from this point forward was another thread I'd pull to unravel her completely. She was dancing on the edge of a cliff, and I was the wind. It was a charity gala she'd been planning for weeks. One of those semi-formal, mid-tier events filled with people trying to look important while sipping overpriced wine and pretending to care about clean water or literacy programs. She'd begged me to come, said it was important to her, that it would mean a lot if we showed up as a couple. That was a new one, as a couple. She'd been speaking in singular terms for months now. So I agreed. Wore the tailored suit she always said made me look like a Wall Street villain, smiled when she took my arm, and let her lead us into a crowd full of people she suddenly seemed too eager to impress. She was radiant that night, glowing in a silk dress the color of dry blood, hair curled just enough to look effortless, her perfume subtle but surgical, vanilla and something sharp. She introduced me to a dozen new people with names I forgot the moment she said them, laughing a little too hard, touching my arm a little too often, like a woman trying to erase guilt with proximity. I let her play her game, let her believe the night was hers. Then, halfway through the second course, just as she excused herself to check on the silent auction items, I stepped aside to the AV booth and handed a flash drive to the tech running the background slideshow. Told him I was a donor with a photo tribute I'd forgotten to submit. He smiled, nodded, slid it into the laptop. And 5 minutes later, during a lull in conversation and the soft clinking of forks, the projector behind the stage flickered once, then shifted. The room fell silent. First, it was a photo of her sitting in someone else's lap, eyes closed, lips parted, fingers tangled in his hair. Then a video. Her voice, unmistakable, giggling in that high-pitched tone she reserved for flirting, whispering, "You should have seen how easy it is to lie to him." A ripple of confused murmurs surged through the crowd. She walked in just as the clip ended, her face lit by the last glow of the projector. She froze, dropped her champagne glass. It shattered, the only sound in the stunned silence. Everyone turned to look at her, then slowly at me. I stepped forward, calm as a surgeon, and handed her the remote to the slideshow. You accidentally left your cloud synced to our home network, I said, loud enough for the nearby tables to hear. I figured if you were going to show off tonight, you might as well show the full picture. Her eyes darted, lips parted like she was about to speak, but nothing came. Then it started. It's not what you think, she said, voice trembling, eyes wide with the primal panic of a liar caught mid-spin. I didn't respond. Just stared. Let the silence do the work. We were just talking that night, she tried again, weaker, already seeing how useless that was. It was a mistake, okay? A stupid, one-time mistake. Still nothing from me. Just the cold stare of a man who's already buried the version of her he once loved. You never paid attention to me, she snapped, the shift into blame as predictable as clockwork. You were always working, always distracted. You weren't there, emotionally. I needed validation? I cut in, my voice even, deliberate, like I was teaching her the definition of her own failure. You found it in the arms of a man who thinks wearing sunglasses indoors makes him a philosopher? The crowd laughed, low, uncomfortable, but enough to shake her. Her face twitched, her pride unraveling in slow motion. You're humiliating me, she hissed, stepping closer, her whisper sharp as glass. No, I said, not backing away. You did that to yourself. I just turned on the lights. She tried to gather herself, lifting her chin, fake confidence settling into her posture like armor. You won't leave. You don't have the guts. You still love me. You're just mad right now. Her voice cracked on the last word. I leaned in, close enough that no one else could hear, and said, I stopped loving you the moment you practiced lying to me in the mirror. She blinked, and in that blink, I saw the mask fall off. No more seduction, no more spin. Just fear. The realization that the safety net was gone, that the man who always forgave had disappeared, that I was no longer playing by her script. Around us, the gala buzzed back to life in scattered whispers and silent stares, forks poking at half-eaten food, eyes pretending not to watch. But we were frozen, locked in a moment too sharp to dull. She reached out like she might touch my arm, apologize, cry maybe. But I didn't move, didn't blink. Just let her hand hover in the space between us like a ghost of what used to be. And I waited. Let the weight of her collapse settle into the air. The crowd didn't matter. The noise didn't matter. Only the silence between us did, the kind of silence that marks the beginning of the end. She followed me out of the gala like a shadow dragged behind a collapsing building, heels clicking too fast across the marble floor, breath catching in that shallow, panicked way liars breathe when the lies run out. The second the doors shut behind us, she erupted, no build-up, no transition, just fire. You had no right, she snapped, face flushed with a mix of embarrassment and rage. You humiliated me in front of everyone. I didn't stop walking, didn't flinch. I didn't humiliate you, I said calmly. I revealed you. She grabbed my arm, nails digging into the fabric of my suit. You smothered me, she hissed, her voice rising. Every day, you just existed, always there, always hovering. Do you know how suffocating that is? I looked at her like a puzzle I had already solved. So you found air between someone else's sheets? She recoiled, blinking hard like the words had hit deeper than she expected. You were boring, she spat, her voice cracking now, desperation blooming beneath the venom. Everything was the same. Routine. You had no passion. No fire. No life. I nodded once, slowly. And yet, you stayed, until you found someone too dumb to see you coming. Her lip curled, teeth clenched as she tried to reshape the argument, find a foothold in the crumbling narrative. This wouldn't have happened if you were a real man. I turned to face her fully then, eyes locked, voice low and sharp. A real man? I asked. A real man is the one who watched you throw away loyalty for ego and still let you believe you had the upper hand. A real man doesn't yell, he lets the truth speak for him. And right now, it's screaming. She staggered back a step, tears welling, not the kind born of remorse, but frustration, anger, the bitter taste of losing control. You think you're so above it all, she snapped. You think being cold makes you strong? No, I said. But it makes me free. She tried a different angle then, voice trembling, eyes wide with faux sincerity. I made a mistake, okay? People make mistakes. We can fix this. We can go to therapy, or, you weren't looking for therapy, I cut her off, tone like ice. You were looking for attention. You just didn't think it would come with consequences. So that's it, she said, arms flailing slightly as her composure continued to erode. You're just walking away? Like none of it mattered. I stepped closer, voice quiet enough to make her lean in, which only made it sting more. It mattered to me. That's why this ends with you alone. She started crying then, mascara smudging under her eyes, the scene shifting from anger to desperation with the subtlety of a storm snapping into a scream. I loved you, she sobbed. You don't understand what I was going through. You never gave me the chance to, I said. You made a choice. I'm just matching your energy. She paced, wringing her hands, muttering to herself. You're heartless. You're emotionally unavailable. You never opened up. I tilted my head slightly. You confuse boundaries with barriers. Just because you didn't get to control my emotions doesn't mean I didn't have any. She stopped, breathing hard, chest rising and falling as if the air was thinner now. What do you want from me? She whispered. Nothing, I said. That's what makes this beautiful. I don't want revenge. I don't want an apology. I don't want closure. I just want a way. She stared at me, and in that moment, I saw the exact second she understood that she no longer had a grip on the situation, or me. That no matter how loud she got, how ugly or broken or seductive she tried to be, it would all bounce off the surface of a man who had finally, fully stopped caring. That was the wound she couldn't recover from, not the exposure, not the humiliation, not even the loss. It was the indifference. I wasn't angry. I wasn't hurt. I was done. And in her world, being hated was still a form of connection. But being nothing to me? That was the abyss. Her tears slowed, her breathing steadied, but her eyes were frantic, like she was searching for a version of me that still existed yesterday, someone she could twist, provoke, manipulate. But I was gone. She threw one last jab, almost like a reflex. No one will love you like I did. I smiled for the first time that night. God, I hope not. She stood there trembling, broken in her heels, makeup ruined, image shattered, and I just watched. Not because I enjoyed her fall, but because I needed her to see it happen without a single curse, without a single raised voice. Just truth. Just silence. Just me, walking away while she finally realized she'd lost something she could never fake again. Respect. The day after the gala, I began my work, not with fury, but with absolute clarity. I didn't burn anything. I didn't scream or smash dishes. I brewed a pot of coffee, opened my laptop, and began building a digital guillotine one click at a time. First, I gathered every piece of evidence I had: screenshots, message logs, location timestamps, synced photo albums, receipts from her wellness retreats, every bit of digital infidelity that had crossed the threshold of our shared accounts. I organized it like a trial brief, categorized by date, location, and type of lie. Then I printed it all, neatly, discreetly, and placed it into a plain manila folder labeled only with her name. Next came the accounts. We had 3 joint bank accounts and a shared savings. What she didn't know was that months ago, after the first red flags, I'd opened a private business account in my name only and slowly rerouted my direct deposits there. Every week, I transferred just enough to look like normal savings activity, while siphoning the rest away to safety. That Friday morning, I logged in, froze the joint accounts, canceled the cards, and rerouted the utilities into my name. By noon, she wouldn't be able to gas up her car or buy a latte without calling me. And I wasn't going to pick up. Then came the car. The lease was in my name, though she drove it. A simple phone call and it was scheduled for repossession under non-payment terms, a legal technicality she wouldn't have time to argue before it vanished from the parking lot of whatever yoga studio or side piece's apartment she happened to be loitering at. I ordered a ride home for her in advance, just to twist the knife with a smile. Next was the apartment. She never asked whose name was on the lease when we moved into that sleek, overpriced downtown loft. It was mine, just mine, and she'd been late on rent 3 times when I let her handle the payments, to feel more independent. Her portion was never paid. I pulled up the leasing company's portal, submitted my intent to vacate, and scheduled the cancellation of all future payments. I even paid the termination fee up front. I already had a fully furnished condo waiting across town. Cheaper, quieter, and without the scent of betrayal embedded in the walls. Then came the social perimeter. Her friends were mostly borrowed, acquaintances from my side she had absorbed over the years. I sent each of them a simple message, not dramatic, not accusatory, just factual. I'm letting you know that Sarah and I are separating. If you're curious as to why, I've attached a folder. I have no ill will toward anyone. You're free to draw your own conclusions. No begging for sympathy. No pleading for sides. Just data. Just truth. Within hours, the responses began. Shock. Disgust. One even apologized for ever defending her. And one, Her old college roommate sent me a message that changed everything. She'd known. She hadn't approved. And she had emails, photos, even a copy of a letter Sarah had written to Kyle, detailing how she planned to leave me once she safely secured the condo, the car, and enough of the savings. She even used the word safely, like I was some storm she had to escape from, instead of the man who built her world piece by piece. I added that to the folder. Then, I scheduled a quiet meeting with a divorce attorney I'd already vetted. No drama, no scene, just signatures and checkboxes. We filed under irreconcilable differences and requested a preliminary injunction to prevent any sale or transfer of marital assets. She would receive the notice in 2 days. And the best part? She didn't even know it yet. She was still floating, still playing the victim, probably still rehearsing her next emotional monologue to sell to whichever friend she hadn't lost yet. Meanwhile, I made one final call to her HR department. Again, no rage, no slander, just a courteous notification that a folder containing photographs and messages, many taken during company hours and on company property, had fallen into my lap. I clarified that I was not pursuing any legal action yet, but that I felt obligated to inform them, as some of the content could compromise her position. I thanked them for their time. I hung up, and then I waited. Because the thing about revenge, when done right, is that it doesn't have to be loud. It doesn't need fire or broken glass or sobbing confessions. It just needs to be complete. And that's what this was. Complete. A quiet dismantling of a liar's kingdom, brick by brick, until all that was left was a confused, furious shell of a woman standing in the ruins of her own manipulation, wondering when exactly she lost control. She still thought there was time. Still thought she could spin the narrative, shift the blame, cry her way back into some semblance of power. But it was already over. The final strings were being pulled, and she didn't even know the stage lights had gone out. It happened at her sister's engagement party, a polished little affair at a country club she used to sneer at, back when she still pretended to care about authenticity and minimalism. But now, here she was, draped in a champagne-colored dress, smiling like a politician, floating from conversation to conversation with that carefully constructed grace she had mastered over the years. She thought this night was about someone else. She thought she could blend into the celebration, reclaim some status, pretend the cracks in her life were invisible to everyone else just because she was wearing heels and lipstick. She didn't know that the folder had already been sent to her parents, her sister, the maid of honor, her best friend Lisa, even her cousin with the podcast she always bragged about being featured on. It had arrived in their inboxes that morning, marked private, concerning Sarah. Just facts, dates, messages, photos, audio clips, no commentary, no slander, just truth, laid bare like bones on a table. And as she sipped her wine and laughed with a group of family friends, she didn't notice the first shift, her father's eyes lingering a little too long on her, his jaw set in that old, disappointed way. Her mother's smile, tight-lipped and forced, as if it were stapled to her face just to get through the night. Her sister, the bride-to-be, barely acknowledging her as she passed by. She noticed eventually. You could see it in the way her steps slowed, the way she started checking her phone, then looking around as if the lighting had changed. And then Lisa approached, once her closest confidant, the one she used to spill every dirty secret to over overpriced cocktails and smug laughs. Lisa didn't hug her. She didn't even smile. She just held out her phone and said quietly, "You need to leave." Sarah blinked, tried to laugh it off. "What are you talking about?" she said, all fake confusion and practiced innocence. But Lisa didn't flinch, just turned the screen toward her. One of the photos. The video, queued up. Sarah's mouth dropped open as her own voice played back to her. You should have seen how easy it is to lie to him. You could see her knees almost buckle, the wine glass trembling in her hand. Who sent this? She stammered, but she already knew. Her eyes darted around, and then they landed on me. I was across the patio, leaning casually against a stone pillar, sipping sparkling water, watching. Our eyes locked, and for the first time, I saw it all unravel in real time, the panic crawling up her spine, the desperation clawing at her throat. She turned back to Lisa, pleading now, voice cracking. It was just a mistake, okay? I wasn't thinking straight. He was cold, he wasn't, but Lisa cut her off. Don't, she said. Just don't. And then, like dominoes falling, it began. Her mother turned away mid-conversation and walked off without a word. Her sister whispered something to a bridesmaid, who glanced at Sarah and immediately looked away. Her father walked past her without so much as eye contact. The music played on, soft and unobtrusive, like a soundtrack to the collapse of an empire. And then Kyle arrived. She hadn't seen him yet. He came in late, clearly not expecting the silent war zone he'd walked into. He saw her, smiled, started walking over, then paused halfway as his phone buzzed. He looked down, stared, his face drained of color. He raised his head, locked eyes with her across the room, and in front of everyone, family, friends, strangers, he turned around and walked out without saying a word. That was the moment. The mask she wore cracked, visibly, audibly. Her breath hitched. Her mouth twitched into a smile, like she might still be able to laugh it off, but her eyes gave her away, wild, frantic, betrayed by the truth she had so carefully buried for so long. "This is insane," she cried out suddenly, loud enough for the crowd to quiet. "You're all judging me for something that isn't even your business. You don't know what he was like to live with." No one responded. No one defended her. The silence was merciless. And I just stood there, arms folded, watching, not gloating, not speaking, just present. And that presence, that stillness, crushed her. Because in that moment, she realized I hadn't just exposed her, I'd outgrown her. I wasn't part of her chaos anymore. I wasn't reacting. I wasn't arguing. I was simply done. And that terrified her more than any angry outburst ever could. She stood there in the middle of the patio, surrounded by people who once adored her, who now saw her clearly for the first time. She was crying now, mascara bleeding, voice high and brittle. "You think he's innocent?" she screamed. "He's not a saint. He just wants to look like the good guy." Still, no one said a word. No one came to her side. She turned to me one last time, hands out, begging. "Say something," she whispered, her voice small now, broken. I met her eyes, took a breath, and said, "I already did." And then I walked past her, slow, deliberate, letting her feel the weight of every eye that no longer saw her as anything but the architect of her own downfall. It started with a scream, hers, loud and sharp enough to cut through the music and conversations, slicing the air at her mother's retirement party like a blade. People turned instantly, forks paused mid-air, drinks halfway to lips, all eyes snapping toward the sudden scene unraveling in real time. She was already charging across the floor, heels pounding like gunshots on tile, finger pointed at me as if I were the one who'd set fire to her house and danced in the ashes. "You think you're a hero?" she spat, voice cracking, loud enough for everyone to hear. "You think you're some kind of martyr just because you kept your mouth shut while spying on me like a coward?" The room stilled. Her parents stood frozen near the cake table, her mother's hand to her mouth, her father already shaking his head. My sister stepped closer to me but didn't speak, just stood by, a silent wall of support. I didn't move. I didn't flinch. I let her come. "You humiliated me in front of everyone," she continued, breath heaving. "You ruined my family, my job, my entire life. And for what? So you could look like the noble victim?" I laughed then, not loudly, not mockingly, just enough to pierce her performance. "No," I said. "You did that. I just gave you a mirror." Gasps fluttered through the room like wind through trees. Someone started filming, some young cousin or coworker with wide eyes and an opportunist's instinct for viral content. She noticed, and that only fueled her panic. "Don't act like you were some perfect husband," she shouted, voice shrill now. "You were a ghost in our marriage. You were cold, distant. You never listened, never cared. I was alone with you even when you were home. And that justifies screwing a man who couldn't spell monogamy if you spotted him the first 7 letters?" I snapped back, stepping forward. "You weren't alone. You were bored. You wanted attention, and you traded loyalty for applause from someone who only liked you when your clothes were on his floor." A loud oof rippled from the crowd. Her face twisted. "You don't understand what I needed," she screamed, tears pooling now. "I needed to feel wanted, to feel alive." "Then you should have gotten a therapist," I fired, not a man who thinks deep conversation is discussing which protein shake tastes most like chocolate. Her father stepped between us, trying to calm her, but she pushed him away. "Don't touch me," she snapped. "You all just love him now because he made me the villain. He's manipulative, calculated. He's not who you think he is." Her mother finally spoke, voice trembling but resolute. "No, Sarah. We know exactly who he is. What we don't know is who you've become." And just like that, she cracked. Her posture collapsed in on itself, rage slipping into desperation. "You all think he's so calm, so composed, but he's cruel. He let me walk right into this. He never gave me a chance to explain, to fix anything. You had months, I said, stepping forward again, eyes locked on hers. Every lie you told, every night you said you were working on yourself, every fake event, every carefully timed excuse, I saw through all of it. And I waited. I gave you space, not because I was cruel, but because I wanted to see if you'd ever come clean. You didn't. You doubled down. You made a fool of me. Of us. And then you dared to act like you were the one bleeding. She opened her mouth, but no sound came out. Her lover, Kyle, who had crept into the room earlier with the dumb hope of staying unnoticed, tried to sneak back toward the exit, but my sister spotted him. Hey, Kyle, she called out, voice sharp. Leaving so soon? Everyone turned. The room burst into whispers, phones subtly lifted, faces lit by screens as they recorded the fallout. He froze, stammered something about not wanting drama before Sarah rounded on him. You said you'd be there for me, she snapped, voice cracking again. You said we were real. Yeah, he muttered, glancing around, until your husband dropped a folder full of your lies on half the internet. I didn't sign up to be part of some public execution. So you're running now? She shrieked, and he bolted for the door without answering. She turned back to me, mascara streaking down her face, shoulders shaking. You're a monster, she whispered, voice barely audible now. You wanted to ruin me. I leaned in, just enough for her to hear me clearly but softly enough that only those closest could catch it. No, I said, you ruined yourself. I just stopped cleaning up after you. And then, slowly, I turned and walked away, not storming, not gloating, just walking. The crowd parted like a curtain, silent, stunned, and still. Behind me, she collapsed into a chair, face in her hands, sobbing, while the cameras kept rolling, the whispers kept swirling, and the truth settled like dust over everything she used to control. She disappeared for a few weeks after the explosion. No texts, no posts, nothing but radio silence from someone who once couldn't go 20 minutes without updating the world about her morning affirmations or some overpriced smoothie. When she finally resurfaced, it wasn't the confident, smirking woman who used to walk into every room like it owed her something. It was a shell. The firm she worked at dropped her 3 days after the scandal broke, citing conduct unbecoming of a company representative. HR didn't even bother with a meeting. They just cut her off, revoked her access, and sent her final check by mail. Her social circle disintegrated within 48 hours. Lisa blocked her. Her yoga group removed her from the chat, even her college friend group thread. Once her safe space for validation and gossip went cold. I know this because one of them sent me screenshots of her last desperate message. I messed up, but I'm still me. Don't I deserve a second chance? No one replied. I heard whispers that she moved out of town, some smaller city a couple hours away, started working at a holistic boutique that sold candles, tarot cards, and bath bombs. Somewhere people didn't ask about the past, and she could pretend to be someone else, at least for a while. Kyle, of course, ghosted her. The moment the spotlight hit, he vanished like smoke, deleted her from socials, changed his number, scrubbed every trace of her existence like she was a bad dream he regretted. Her parents won't speak to her. Her father told a mutual friend that he no longer considers her his daughter. Her mother, once her fiercest defender, now avoids her name like it's a slur. I wasn't surprised when she showed up at my door. It was a rainy Tuesday, cliché as hell, standing on my porch in a soaked hoodie. No makeup, face pale, eyes sunken. She knocked twice. I didn't answer. She knocked again, whispered, please. I opened the door, but didn't speak. She stared at me, trembling, every bit of that former arrogance now drowned and rotting. I'm sorry, she said, voice barely audible. I don't expect anything. I just needed to say it. I was wrong. About everything. About you. I miss you. I still love you. I watched her for a long time. Let the weight of her collapse fill the space between us. She looked down, waiting for mercy, or maybe for me to say something. Anything. That would give her a reason to keep hoping. But there was nothing left to save. Nothing left to feel. I looked her in the eyes and said, you buried the man who loved you. And I'm not what rose from the grave. Then I closed the door. No anger. No hate. Just finality. She didn't knock again. And that was the last time I saw her. Now and then, I still get the occasional message, anonymous account, a burner email, vague enough to ignore, but familiar enough to recognize. Things like, do you ever think about us? Or, I still believe in soulmates. I don't respond. Because the truth is, she doesn't exist to me anymore. Not as a lover. Not as a mistake. Not even as a memory worth burning. She's just a story I lived through. One that ended the moment she chose deception over loyalty, comfort over character, pleasure over principle. So to those of you who listened, thank you for staying until the end. I know it was a ride. Let me know where you're tuning in from and whether you enjoyed the story. And if you've ever been on the edge of betrayal yourself, I hope this reminded you. Sometimes silence is the sharpest blade, and walking away is the most brutal revenge of all.